Joining me now is one of Trump's surrogates, a former Illinois governor, Blagojevich. He had his 14-year sentence on a pay-for-play conviction commuted by the former president of the United States. I'm glad that you're here. I'm interested particularly in your insight on these matters in particular. But let me ask you, I do wonder, and I did mention, obviously, the commutation of your sentence. In fact, you were supposed to be released or eligible for parole, I think, next year in 2024, the presidential election year. Is the reason why you were speaking out because of what he did for you then?
Well, thank you, Laura, for saying you're glad that I'm here. I'm glad that I'm here, and I'm here because President Trump commuted my sentence. I didn't break a law, cross the line, or take a penny. It was all politics, routine political talk. I'm here because President Trump, I have a debt of gratitude to him on a personal level, that's for certain. But I'm here as an American because what they're doing to President Trump, a Republican president at the major league level, they successfully did to me, a Democrat governor at the AAA level. They hijacked me from office on things that weren't crimes, all talk, free speech, political conversations that were started by then President-elect Obama. Now, he didn't do anything wrong, but either did I. But they came after me. They were determined to get me. They couldn't convict me at a first trial. They tried me a second time, and then they blatantly used an unlawful standard, a standard the United States Supreme Court expressly said was not the law, to convict me on fundraising requests. And the so-called sale of the Senate seat, which I'm known for, was reversed by the appellate court. They called it nothing more than routine political log rolling.
Well, I do hear you. I don't want to cut you off, but I just want to be clear. Sure. And I understand, obviously, the desire to discuss your own personal case. A jury did convict you. There was an appellate process. The Supreme Court declined to step in and intervene for the 5 of, I believe, the 18. But I don't want to relitigate your case because a jury did speak. And frankly, the charges against Donald Trump they're facing are actually quite distinct. So let me focus on what's happening there. I know you've made the comment that it seems to be a kind of political persecution, that it's not actually a crime. What particular aspect of it do you think ought not to be judged by a jury?
Well, to begin with, I don't think President Trump has any chance at a fair trial in Washington, D.C., where he received 5% of the vote, and the jury pool, 95% of the jury pool voted the other way. So to begin with, he's facing what is unlikely to be a fair trial and could very well end up having the same fate as me. Yes,
but should that be the litmus test? Should that be the litmus test, how the jury or the demographics of an area are voting politically when they're supposed to be voting or making a finding in terms of a verdict? Because really the average defendant, as you well know, is not going to be a political candidate, let alone a presidential candidate. And so how are we to judge the objectivity and impartiality of a jury there?
Well, the old me, before what they did to me happened, I used to trust the system. Now I don't. Governments lie. Our government lied to us about Vietnam, lied to us about the Iraq War. They lied about me, and they're lying now about President Trump. These are not crimes that they've charged him with. You don't like Trump, vote against him. And it's understandable that a lot of people wouldn't like him, Democrats in particular. But this new weaponization of politics, of criminal prosecutors engaging in the political process, while Trump now is in the crosshairs of what they're doing, it's really the American people, all of us, Democrats and Republicans, who are in the crosshairs because they're stealing from us our right to choose our leaders in elections, free and fair, our right to self-government. And these weaponized prosecutors have uncontrolled power. And it was the Democrat Supreme Court Justice Breyer who said in the Governor McDonald case that Jack Smith himself prosecuted, 9-0 reversal of the convictions against that governor. Justice Breyer said the danger of these uncontrolled prosecutors are a threat to our separation of powers. That's what's at stake here.
I certainly hear that, but I want to unpack a couple things here. And one, of course, is it is interesting to think about the notion that you make the assertion that this would be stealing from a person's ability to choose their candidate of choice. That's part of what they are accusing. And again, I'm a former prosecutor, so they have to prove their case in court, as you well know, and a jury is the one to make the ultimate determination. You're talking to somebody who does believe in that process still. But it's interesting to think about if that is the goal, to have the voters ultimately decide. What is being alleged, of course, is that he was trying to, in an attempt of a conspiracy and obstruction and beyond, trying to take away and neutralize the impact of the votes and then, of course, certification. But on this point about the notion of Special Counsel Jack Smith, I've heard a lot of conversations with respect to the weaponization. And just for the audience's edification here, as you well know, the McConnell case came down to, when McConnell for the Virginia governor, came down to the definition of official act and whether they had met their requirement in jury instructions. But let me ask you, do you think there is actually evidence right now to suggest that Jack Smith is either politically motivated or weaponizing the Department of Justice in cahoots with Merrick Garland?
I don't know about whether he's doing that in cahoots with Merrick Garland, but I do think he's weaponizing and politicizing, and I think he's being dishonest. And he could very well be guilty of fraud, because in his very indictment, he claims that President Trump, he doesn't quote President Trump accurately. When President Trump was there on January the 6th, he said, quote, peacefully, patriotically have your voices heard. But in the indictment itself, Jack Smith omits that. And that omission is a significant thing. I would suggest that's fraud on the people and fraud on the court system. And he should be the one who should answer to some of these things. This prosecutor, Jack Smith, is a serial weaponizer of politics. He did it to a Democrat, Senator Edwards. Edwards was given a hung jury. He did it to Senator Menendez, a Democrat from New Jersey, my former colleague. We were both Democratic congressmen together. The judge, he had an honest judge, and the judge threw the case out for insufficient evidence. My judge should have done that, but they were Republicans. There was a Republican prosecutor, Bush appointed, Republican judge, Republican appellate court, and they did a political hit on a Democrat governor. And
but
these Democrats today are doing a
again,
political hit to a Republican president.
Again,
yes.
I just want to refocus the conversation. And again, I certainly understand the tendency to perhaps project during the conversation about what you believe was done to you. But in terms of what Donald Trump is being accused of doing, and the prosecutor in this case is not the prosecutor that was involved in your prosecution, one. And number two, just to clarify, you do not believe, you do not have evidence that there is actual weaponization. It's just that it's being intimated at this point because of a perception of the politics of those who are in office. Is that right?
I have a strong belief that Jack Smith is weaponizing because of my own personal experience and what I went through. I draw on that experience. That's why I talk so much about it, because I lived it myself and I saw it. Look, under Jack Smith's standard, I would be guilty because I believed Al Gore won the election in 2000. And I'd go back to prison because of him. That's the standard he's using against President Trump. And you know who would join me? Jerry Nadler, Adam Schiff, and probably Nancy Pelosi. Because I remember her thinking Gore had won the election. I still think Gore won that election. That's not a crime. That's a belief.
No,
that's free speech. That's what's under assault today by this guy. I'm sorry.
I didn't mean to cut you off. Excuse me.
My fault.
I'm certainly somebody who believes in a respectful, reciprocal conversation. No, it's a conversation. I've invited you here. I want to hear from you. I just want to make sure we don't talk over each other. But what you suggest in the idea of, had you just questioned whether or not Al Gore won, I'll play and bite with that analogy. The indictment goes beyond that. The indictment alleges, and again, I use the word allege for a specific reason. It alleges far more than just the thinking. In fact, one of the paragraphs does talk about the right to contest, to challenge, to even go to court on these matters, but it's the conspirer, the word, that last C word that they are alleging. It seems as though the allegations are far more than just saying, I believe I won, and they are focusing on far more than what happened on January 6th. You are a former governor, so let's talk about your personal experience. Imagine if the allegations had been involved, and yet you were the governor to receive the conversation or receive the statements and the pressure campaigns that were mounted. What would you have thought as a sitting governor at that time?
You mean if President Trump called me and was pressing me? Is that what you're asking?
Yes. Or any president, by the way. It didn't have to be Trump at the time, but any president, had they pressed you and said either the equivalent of wanting to find some number of votes or a discussion about a false slate of electors emerging from your state, what would have been your response as a sitting governor?
Sure. Let's say Hillary Clinton hypothetically called me and I was the governor of Illinois, and she said James Comey just interfered in this election 2 weeks before and talked about a new investigation against me, which very well may have led to her losing that election. Let's say she called me and said, can you find some votes in Illinois that may not have been counted, or whatever the case may be. I would just think she was looking at it politically. She felt like she'd been cheated and had reason to think that because James Comey, one of these weaponized FBI Justice Department people, injected himself in that race. You know, you guys are all angry that Trump's the president. You ought to blame James Comey. He could very well have been the reason why she lost. So let's say hypothetically she called me. I'd accept that. I understand she's, angry and feels cheated and believes that she actually won when she didn't. That's pretty much the worst of it on Trump. He truly believed he won. He was looking to get it rectified. That's free speech. That's America. And what these people are doing is Russia. And I'm telling you, Abraham Lincoln is rolling over in his grave, and the ghost of Joseph Stalin is dancing in the streets with what these weaponized prosecutors are doing to our political system. They did it to me, a Democrat. They did it to John Edwards, a Democrat. Did it to Menendez, a Democrat. They're doing it to a Trump, a Republican.
So it sounds like there's no criteria on which a prosecutor could ever go and prosecute based on an investigation as long as somebody is a political candidate. That can't be the litmus test on these matters. But I understand the conversation is far more expansive. But let me just say, when it comes to the rolling of the graves or the dancing in the street, I get the impression from people that the anger is directed at what happened to lead up to January 6th, and far more than just the notion of what's political speech. But as you know, the criminal intent and one's mens rea, as they say, is about whether you intended to actually commit the crime, not whether you believe the underlying premise. Rod Blagojevich, thank you for joining me tonight. It was nice speaking with you.
It's nice meeting you, Laura. Thank you.